I know that all of you are excited to meet with the senator. He is definitely our senator fighting for us every day in Washington, D.C. Put your hands together. Now, the senator really stood up for me personally in terms of human rights, and especially where I come from. And believe me when I say I lived through such horrible time in Cambodia and so happy to be here in the land of free. The senator really spoke up and wrote a letter to support human rights in Cambodia. And I too am part of that as a delegation of Lowell. And we too write a letter in support of that because we believe that human rights is the key issue that we live in today's society. Now, without any further ado, I also want to welcome up District Attorney Mary Ryan. Put your hand together, please.
Good evening. I want to begin by thanking you for helping to share with me this honor of introducing our Senator, Ed Markey. But I want to first thank all of you for being here tonight. I think that all of us know that we've reached a time in our history when we're going to be making some critical decisions on a variety of issues. And we all know as well that the best decisions are made after there has been conversation, people have expressed their views, and perhaps most importantly, they've been listened to. And that's an important thing to know about the person, the man you're going to be in conversation with tonight. Because Senator Markey and I grew up in cities pretty close together, he in Malden, I in Somerville. And those are places that have a lot in common with Lowell and the greater Lowell area. Perhaps most importantly, it is that they have all been laboratories where the great American experiment has succeeded time and time again. And that experiment relies on a couple of things. It relies on working hard. It relies on taking care of each other. And it relies on being fair. And over again, when you do that, we have seen that folks, whether you're someone with very few resources or someone, as Representative Mum mentioned, who's new to this country, when you do that, you can be successful in any field. And we certainly know that Senator Markey works hard. For over 40 years, he has been in Washington, being a zealous, persistent advocate for his constituents. And he has done so much to ensure that that playing field is fair. He has been a relentless consumer advocate. Time and again, he has fought against monopolies in the electric companies, telecommunication, cable television. He's helped to change the rules about insider trading, something that makes so much unfair. But he also knows that it's hard to do well when you can't be well. And perhaps a hallmark of Senator Markey's work has been his consistent, relentless fight to protect Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security for every American. And perhaps because he has a doctor in the house and knows how important medicine is, he has been equally a champion of bringing critical dollars to bear in important medical research that so many of us in this Commonwealth are fortunate to be close to. Perhaps some of us in this room are alive today because of that kind of important research. And he hasn't just taken care of those of us who are here, he has thought about our future. He's been a champion for the environment. Senator Markey co-authored the only piece of legislation aimed at combating global warming that has passed a chamber in Congress. He's an expert in crafting that legislation. He is an enthusiastic and able gatherer of consensus among his colleagues, but perhaps his most important skill is that skill to invest the countless time that is necessary to really listen to the needs of your constituents. Many of you remember last summer, Senator Markey came up to Lowell, met with our first responders, Chief Windward, and others from the first responder community, from the healthcare community. And he was there to listen, to learn what was working here in Greater Lowell, and to have folks talk to him about what he could do. That was his mantra coming in. What have you done that's working? I want to learn that. And what can I do to make your burden less? Today, I was fortunate enough to be with Senator Markey over at Megan's house, which so many of you know, treatment facility about 1.5 miles away that services young women recovering from substance abuse. Those women were so grateful to have the opportunity to be heard and to listen with his as he did with his characteristic compassion and empathy as they told their stories to Senator Markey. And he heard what was helpful to them, what he could be doing for that. We are so incredibly fortunate to have Senator Markey representing us in Washington, and I assure you that we are extraordinarily well served by him in that role. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our Senator, Senator Edward Markey.
Thank you all so much. And I want to thank Marion Ryan for being the model district attorney for the United States of America. Middlesex County has a district attorney for the ages representing you, protecting us on a daily basis. And as she just said, she and I were just over at Megan's house, which is a home that has been created for young women age 18 to 26 who have problems with addiction. And it is, in my opinion, the model program that I've ever seen in my life. It's here in Lowell, and it is a program that started here, and it helps people from across the entire state. And I think it's going to be a model that is replicated across the entire country, because it's a very smart way of giving these young women the help which they're going to need in order to overcome the illness which they have. And Marion Ryan, as the district attorney here in Middlesex County, has been the law enforcement official who has thought through the smartest ways, not of incarcerating people, but of giving treatment to people who have these problems. Let's be honest, in the 1990s, we criminalized crack cocaine, put a couple of million African-American young men in prison without giving them treatment. And we now realize that we owe an apology to an entire generation of African-American young men because we did not give them the treatments which they needed for their disease. And that's the insight that a district attorney brings to this debate. It's a medical problem. It is something that requires funding. And if we had the funding, we would be able to provide the care. And so, as we know, this is a huge debate which we're about to have on the question of the federal budget. And are we going to put more money in for opioid treatment? We had to fight very hard a year ago in order to get $1 billion put into this program, but only 20% of the people who need treatment are getting treatment right now. And a vision without funding is an hallucination. If you don't fund these programs, then people aren't going to get the medical care which they need in order to deal with those problems. And so that's what District Attorney Ryan brings to this issue. She is the expert. And as she said, I went up here to Lowell about 4 or 5 months ago, and we had a huge summit with all of the parties who are concerned with this issue. And it was, to me, very heartening to know that the state of the art is being practiced here, and it's only being improved as we learn more and more. So I thank you for being the great district attorney which you are. Thank you, Mary. And to Ratty, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a great state representative up here. And as you said, I have written a letter along with Nikki Tsongas, the great Nikki Tsongas, great United States Congresswoman from the city of Lowell and for this entire congressional district. So with Elizabeth Warren and I, we wrote a letter to Secretary Tillerson, the Secretary of State, demanding that there be much tougher action taken in Cambodia in order to ensure that the human rights of every person in that country are being protected, that the access to the tools of democracy be made available to everyone in that country, and that the leading dissident in that country be freed, so that we can be sure that the principles which we advocate as a country are in fact those which we're advocating for all across the world. And Cambodia is at the top of the list, and I thank you, Ratty, for everything you do on an ongoing basis to fight for the city of Lowell, but to fight for the Cambodian people no matter where they are in our country or around the world. I know that Mayor Fiorentini is here from Haverhill, and congratulate, another inauguration coming up. State Representative Juana Mattia is here from Lawrence, and I've worked with her on opioid issues as well. Steve Kerrigan is here. He and Senator Kennedy have always been very much passionate about these healthcare issues. I know that Bopa Malone is here as well, and many others who care about these issues and are advocating for action to be taken. So here we are. We're in Lowell on Sunday afternoon, but we had a little bit of snow yesterday. Not as much as Alabama got. They got twice as much as us, and it's like the most they got in 30 years, but of course they don't want to attribute that to climate change at all, that something could be happening. It's like global weirding, as we know. As the planet warms, it actually creates kind of contradictory reactions sometimes. You know how you put that 2 blankets on at night in the middle of the winter, and by 3 in the morning you're waking up and you're saying, man, is it hot in here? I got to take off one of those blankets. That's what happens when you keep layering in. So you start off cold, then you're warm, and then by 5 in the morning you're cold again, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. Well, that's what this blanket of CO2 has been doing to our planet. And for the Republicans down in Washington, they're in denial. I just went with 4 other United States senators, Democrats, to Bonn, Germany, as the whole world was gathering just 3 weeks ago, so that they realized that there was a whole group of people in the United States that disagreed with Donald Trump. Just unbelievable. You know, we're the Bay State, but we're also the brain state. Huh? So, and especially when you're here on the campus of UMass Lowell, you know that smart people have already concluded that it is human activity that is causing this dramatic warming. And it was also, you know, when the College of Cardinals decided to name a Jesuit as the new pope 4 years ago, who also taught high school chemistry, you knew that was going to be bad for Donald Trump in science when you have a Jesuit pope who taught high school chemistry. So he tried to persuade Donald Trump that he was wrong. to no avail, but we went there to deliver that message to him. But in this budget and tax bill, which is being propounded right now, they're trying to undermine wind, undermine solar, cut out the benefits for this revolution, which obviously is something which is central to our ability to be the global leader and not laggard, which is what his goal is as president. So that's something that I think is very important, and what I try to do is bring that Massachusetts perspective into every room in which I get an opportunity to just advocate for science down in Washington. So you're all gathered here tonight, and we're all suffering from PTSD, post-Trump stress syndrome, and it's a Trump a day, every day on some issue that you just scratch your head, or you just wonder how can our president be saying that about whatever the issue may be. But that's where we are. So I thought I would start with, let me see here, I thought I would start with this tax bill. And do you have these things over here, Christina? This is Christina Pacheco coming over here to give me these things. So yeah, I'll just do this one right here. So last Friday night, this is what happens. Last Friday night. So no Democrats are in the room. Hardly any Republicans are in the room. And so all of a sudden we get this bill, 500 pages long, and we're going to be voting on this tax bill for $1.5 trillion later on in the evening. So this is one of the pages here in the bill that was just kind of written in, add. And then what they did was they added all this language here at some time, maybe 15 minutes before they gave it to us, as to another tax break, which is in the bill that we're going to vote on. And then they passed it. We had the vote at about 2 o'clock in the morning, on Saturday morning. And then with great confidence, the Republicans felt, well, now all they have to do is work it out with the Republicans in the House of Representatives. And how hard is that? They just have to figure out how to give more tax breaks to more people without any correlation with how it might impact the economy. But then Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, and then other Republicans all started to get very, very honest about what their agenda was. And they didn't write in this over here in the bill, but it turns out that in addition to these additions at the last minute, then Paul Ryan says, and now our next agenda is to cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. $1.5 trillion of tax breaks, $1.5 trillion of a deficit, and how to solve the problem, $1.5 trillion worth of cuts in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So you don't have to be kind of the Justice League of America to figure out what's going on here. You know, this crime being perpetrated, you know, against ordinary families in our country. They're going to give tax breaks to the wealthiest, to the most powerful, just crazy disproportionately so, a few crumbs for the middle class, and then go after the things which really are kind of the central safety net programs for families in our country. And that's Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Those are the programs that everyone can rely upon, that they could not rely upon. You know, when my grandmother died, my mother was a junior in high school. There were 5 sisters. The program before these programs were, one of the girls is going to stay home. So that's what my mother had to do, even though she was valedictorian. She had to stay home. One of the 5 had to stay home. That was the social safety net. Huh? Was she smarter than me and my brothers? Of course she was. She did calculus for fun at the table, but that's the safety net. One of the girls stays home. She had to be like a single mom at that point. Huh? And my father graduated from Lawrence Vocational High School, the vocational program at Lawrence High, and the Lawrence Savings Bank went under in 1930 with the lifetime savings of all of the Markeys So there were no Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, no Securities Exchange Commission, no protections. Just let the bankers do whatever they want. So that, my mother would always say, Eddie, you're not any smarter than your mother or father. And you'll never work as hard as your father, the milkman. Okay? That's a hard job my father had. Delivering hood milk, you know, triple deckers. That's a hard job. My father always said, Eddie, get a job where you wear a jacket. You really don't have a tough job until you have a job without a jacket on, okay? But it wasn't because they weren't smart and they didn't work hard. It was just the whole system. There was no Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, Securities Exchange Commission, no programs to help them, to protect them, ordinary families. So there's their plan. Their plan is to now go in and raid these programs, okay? So that's what we're going to be fighting over the next 2 weeks. They're going to try to jam this tax bill through, and we're going to be standing up, raising our voices, fighting as hard as we can to make sure that this incredible addition of more breaks and subtraction then of the programs, which we know they're coming at, because now they have made it quite clear in public in the past week. Paul Ryan, that's what they're coming for. So they don't even hide it, although they didn't say it until after the tax bill passed House and Senate. Now they're trying to reconcile it. It's called reconciliation process. You might hear that on the radio or TV, reconciliation. Well, the key 3 words are con, okay? The con part of it, okay? And if your father's from Lawrence, you grow up learning what a con can look like, okay? So that's kind of pretty obvious what they are doing. So we're going to be battling this incredible tax break. And inside of it, by the way, they, depending upon whether it's the House or Senate, reduce dramatically or eliminate the ability for people from Massachusetts to deduct the state and local taxation that we have here. And it will also limit the size of the home mortgage deduction. And we all know there's one problem we don't have in Massachusetts, and that's rising housing costs, okay? So it's going to hit us as bad as any other state. We're at the top of the list of those who will get hit by that as well. In addition, here we are at the UMass Lowell campus, they're also now going to tax all the stipends that graduate students get here at UMass and all across the country. So there might be some young person, they're in graduate school here, they're studying some subject that will never get them rich, but we need in America to have them educated. And so from the beginning of time until now, those people, if they got a stipend from the university, they didn't have to pay taxes on it. Just the university wanted to have that young person come to the campus. From now on, it's going to get taxed. I mean, think about this. They're giving tax breaks to billionaires, tax breaks to corporations, but where are we going to get the money from? Oh, let's tax graduate students studying inorganic chemistry and get the money back from them. Huh? How absurd, how obscene is that as an equation for growth in our country? Huh? Who's going to contribute more to our economy? Matter of fact, if you just take a handful of billionaires who are going to be getting tax breaks in this bill, make more money than every single kindergarten teacher in America. So who contributed more to our economy last year? You know, 1 million kindergarten teachers or 5 hedge fund managers, huh? I mean, come on, it's not even a close call in terms of the long-term well-being growth of our country, okay? It's absurd. So that's the big debate coming up in the next 2 weeks, and it's going to grow more and more and more intense. And again, it's like climate change with Trump. He is able to harness voluminous amounts of information to defend knowingly erroneous premises. And the knowingly erroneous premise is that you can cut taxes dramatically, simultaneously call for a huge increase in defense spending, and balance the budget simultaneously. So we know they're just going to be shedding crocodile tears about that deficit, and then they're going to say, oh, that deficit's getting so big, let's now cut Medicare, Medicaid. Right? So they've always harbored an ancient animosity towards these programs. And this is now going to give them the opportunity to turn and say, oh, the deficit is exploding. Let's do something about it. So that's why we're in Massachusetts. We're only 2% of the population, but we're not an ordinary 2%. we're not an ordinary 2%. We have the highest educational levels, highest level of health care, best environment, most energy efficient. We're not an ordinary place, and our unemployment rate is 3.7%. So we believe in capitalism, no question about it. We want everyone working. The unemployment rate in Lowell right now is 4%. We believe in it, and we want it to go down. But we believe in capitalism with a conscience. You just can't take the healthcare, education, environmental programs and throw them out the window. We want to be rich, but we want to do well and do good at the same time, right? There's a nice balance that you have to and must strike. And that includes making sure that, going back to District Attorney Ryan, that we don't shortchange the opioid crisis. We had 2,000 people die last year. We hope that we're making some progress, but there is no guarantee that in the absence of real funding to help with real treatment, that we can make a kind of representation to families that help is on the way, that we are going to be dealing with this issue. And it's not like a problem that came, down here from Krypton. It was physicians overprescribing. It was the pharmaceutical industry saying that these drugs really aren't a problem. So this was a professional group of people, physicians and pharmaceutical companies, who foisted this problem upon ordinary families with misrepresentations about the overall level of danger. And so that's a problem that we have to make sure gets funded. And the more that we cut, the bigger the tax breaks, is the more they're just going to say, look, I'd like to help, but as you can see, I don't have any money. Help you out. Really do care though. And so Donald Trump last year up in New Hampshire said, this is a beautiful state. I can't believe how many people up here have this opioid problem. That was a year ago. How much money has he put up so far? Zero. It's a year later. Where's the national emergency? Where's the national crisis? 33,000 people died last year from this. 33,000 people. And if people were dying at the same rate as Massachusetts, because we're only 2% of the population of the country, and 2,000 people died, you'd have to multiply by 50, and that would be 100,000 people would have died from opioid overdoses last year, and 75,000 of them would have had fentanyl. And now it's 85% of the people in Massachusetts who are dying have fentanyl in their system. So where's the help? Where's the assistance that's going to be provided? In the budget, our bill $15 million is in the budget right now, and we're going to fight to keep it there. And these will be like electronic devices that can be deployed as fentanyl detectors along the Mexican border, the drugs that are coming in, the fentanyl coming in from China, so we can detect it, so that more law enforcement officials like Mary and Ryan have the tools which they need in order to deal with this issue. So I have $15 million built into this bill so far. It hasn't come out, that I'm trying to add to give the tools to the professionals to try to protect people where they think it is necessary. But it's got to be all hands on deck. The preview of coming attractions on healthcare is pretty obvious, because they tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. We were successful in blocking it, but that's only John McCain at 1:30 in the morning coming out with his thumbs down. Inside this tax bill, they have a repeal of the individual mandate that they've built into the tax bill. A repeal is now in the Senate bill. Now, the House bill doesn't have it, so we're trying to raise as much noise as we can about the profound consequences of removing that individual mandate. And again, we're in Massachusetts. We invented this. We're at right now 98% coverage. And there are people who know it's not perfect, so we say, let's keep improving it. Let's lower the costs, lower the premiums. Let's work on it, but we're not going to eliminate it. We're in Massachusetts. We're going to try to solve the problems inside of us. They're saying, remove the individual mandate. So that's going to be a huge battle. And we know that they're going to continue to revisit over and over again all of these issues. I'll just quickly do a couple of other issues, and then we'll just open it up for people to ask questions if they want. We're up here in Lowell. Lowell was the headquarters of Wang. This was it. This is the epicenter. So Wang and digital kind of had a little misperception about how the whole thing would unfold. I said to Ann Wang in 1983, I said, "Are you afraid of AT&T getting into your business?" He says, "I am not afraid of AT&T." He says, "I am afraid of a company whose name I do not know, who is faster, more agile." So along comes Steve Jobs, along comes Bill Gates, along comes this whole revolution that puts the power out at the ends of the network. So it's not these huge mainframes anymore. So Lowell was really the national and international leader right here, was headquartered here in Wang. So now AT&T has reconstituted itself into a form that looks a lot like it did in the past. And along with Verizon and Comcast, it wants to repeal net neutrality. So what does net neutrality mean? In simple language to people in this room, how does it relate to your lives? Well, you know all these young people who are here at UMass Lowell? You know one thing they all have in common, regardless of their major? An incredible digital skill set. An incredible ability to navigate the net. An incredible ability to think of an idea that they might want to bring to the world at some point. And the world, as we define it, is 320 million people in the United States, right? So net neutrality says to those young people, you got a good idea? No one can discriminate against you. No one can tip you upside down as a big broadband company and shake money out of your pockets. You can innovate. You don't have to spend money. You don't have to raise the money to pay the fees. You just have to hire the smartest 10 kids that you went to school with and come up with this idea. Now you're online, and then there's 10,000 square feet you need in Lowell, then 50,000 square feet, and before you know it, they're off and running, and we have hundreds of these companies, which is what the Massachusetts economy is now. We have now basically replicated what is going on and has been going on in Silicon Valley. So we now have all these young people who want to stay here, and we have hundreds, thousands of these smaller companies, right? Net neutrality, if it gets repealed, and that's where Trump wants to take it, once again plays into the hands of the big companies, and not these thousands of small companies whose names we do not know. We do not know their names, but they are the bulk of the growth in the jobs. That's where these young people then go out and work. And then when you say to them, where do you work? And then they give you the name of some fancy, polysyllabic company that you never heard of. Well, that's our revolution. That's who we are. Net neutrality is at the heart of it. And so I'm going to do an event tomorrow with a whole bunch of companies that are concerned about this issue. I already had a press conference about 4 months ago. How many of you have ever heard of the company Wayfair? There you go. 5 years ago, you wouldn't have heard of Wayfair. Wayfair's goal is to fill every square inch of the Prudential building with their employees in the next 3 years. Huh? Can you imagine that? Wayfair. iRobot. Huh? These are the brands of the future from Massachusetts. They're not mega companies, but you multiply them all, in terms of their employment. So net neutrality, huge issue. And I am the author of a big chunk of all of the telecommunications laws in our country over the years, and there is no greater principle that exists online than the principle of non-discrimination. That if you've got a good idea, you can get online, you can get all your buddies together, and you can start thinking about how you're going to take that new idea and scale it and be successful. And you shouldn't have to be worried about hiring lawyers to sue the broadband companies against their discriminatory practices. And finally, I'll just mention the issue of the nuclear weapons program in North Korea. The president keeps talking about bringing the fire and fury of the United States towards North Korea, leaving the impression that he is actually considering engaging in preventative nuclear war, that we would use nuclear weapons first. So what I did was I asked Bob Corker, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to have the first hearing in 41 years in Congress on the question of the first use of nuclear weapons by the United States and not by another country. And this hearing that we had 3 weeks ago, it was frightening to think about the lack of safeguards that actually exist that would be a check on Donald Trump's ability to be able to launch without any consultation whatsoever with the United States Congress, with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on which I serve. So this would not be a situation where North Korea launched a nuclear weapon towards us, and then you'd say to the president, well, do whatever you have to do. This is a situation where they haven't launched one towards us, and he decides anyway, after waking up in the morning at Mar-a-Lago, that he's going to do it and launch it back first, his way. Not a good place to be in. Okay? So I've introduced legislation that requires that there be a vote by the United States Congress. Under the United States Constitution, only the Congress can declare war against another country. We have advocated this responsibility for too long. And it's one thing not to have declared it in war after war, but we cannot abdicate it when it comes to starting a nuclear war, because that will make all of the other wars, except for World War II, will look like patty cake. Because this thing will start very rapidly. North Korea has already had nuclear weapons for 11 years. So to think that they wouldn't have the capacity just to launch towards, let's just say, the 200,000 American troops and their families in South Korea, that's only 30 miles south of the North Korean border. So those would be the people in the first line of fire. And then Guam, as well, as you've been reading, that's also reachable by the North Koreans. So the consequences would be vast. There would be more people who would die. The bombs that they have now are greater than anything in Nagasaki or Hiroshima. So the number of deaths would exceed the Korean War, exceed the Vietnam War. That would be in the first day. First day, right? If this thing just continued to escalate. So I'm committed to ensuring that the United States Congress makes Donald Trump accountable, that we have this debate in our country. There are certain things that, in my opinion, they're at the top of the list. Climate change actually poses an existential threat. Nuclear war poses an existential threat. And we have to make sure that we have this debate in our country. So why don't I stop right there, and we have Nolan over here, Vanessa over here, and if any of you have questions, we'd just love to have you just walk over by them, and if you could just walk over and just get in line, if you would, and I will try to answer your questions for you. So, yes, sir. Could you identify yourself, tell us where you're from?
Yes, I'm from Lowell. Mark Rolfson is my name. And I wanted to first say, Senator Markey, thank you for your many years in Congress fighting for the needs of the mass majority of Americans. At this traumatic time in America, millions in the resistance and the Me Too social media movements believe we must immediately end any cooperation with Trump and his Republican Party, hell-bent on transferring billions of dollars from poor and vulnerable Americans to their billionaire 2018 campaign donors, and instead first forced Trump to be held accountable for his sexual assaults. The only way to begin this is to have all Senate Democrats refuse to vote for any 2018 budget plan, since 8 Democratic votes are needed for it to pass, thereby shutting down the government on December 22, 2017. Trump has stated himself that we, quote, need a good government shutdown, unquote, so he can further trash Democrats. But it will be truly the Republicans who get blamed for any shutdown. So, Senator, I wanted to ask if you would pledge to at least speak to Democratic leaders about this action before December 22nd. I feel a government shakedown would quickly bring millions of Americans to the streets and demonstrations and provide the only way that the daily ongoing destruction of our democracy is stopped by nonviolent means. History gives us proof of this through the actions of the greatest figures from the past century, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and Nelson Mandela.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. So we have 2 weeks right now. So let me give you principle number 1 of the Democrats. The Republicans want to increase defense spending. And we're saying, well, we want the exact same amount of money for healthcare and education and science as you're going to give to the Defense Department. So what does that mean? So what we're saying is we will not cooperate in any bill, any budget that does not provide for the money for CHIP, for the Child Health Program. They are refusing to give it to us. We don't get that, no budget. We want the money for community health centers. They don't want to have that increase. They don't give it to us, no bill. Scientific research, we're saying it must go up. Veterans benefits, they served us, we must serve them. It must go up. We want to have a resolution of the Dreamers bill, the DACA kids. We're demanding that be resolved. So when they come in this budget process, they want money still to be determined, but it might be an extra 40, 50, 60 billion dollars in defense spending. We're saying, all right, we want 40, 50, 60 billion on all these other programs, and we want the Dreamers protected as well. And we want it in the bill, and we want it by December 22nd, 2017. So that's where we are going to be, and we're going to just draw the line and have that be our operational set of principles that we negotiate on, because that's pretty much the Massachusetts agenda. Okay, let's be honest. Okay, it's healthcare, it's education, all the way down the line, but it's also veterans and ultimately these Dreamers, these kids who. I met a Dreamer a few months ago. She gave the commencement speech at Salem State University 2 years ago. She's a Dreamer. She'll have to go back to the Dominican Republic. Why did we, for a second, even contemplate that as a possible alternative? This young woman is a star here in our country, and she was brought here as a young girl when she was 3 or 4 years old. So let's protect at least those 800,000 young people, of whom 8,000 are in the state of Massachusetts. So let's do that. Yes, come on over here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Carla Eusebio. I've been here in Massachusetts for 21 years. I live in Chelmsford. What I wanted to ask you, Senator, is I'm originally from Puerto Rico, and I'm sure everybody knows the situation that is going on down there. This tax reform that is attacking Social Security, Medicare, that attacks everybody in the mainland, is also attacking my mother because she is receiving Social Security, and is also attacking the Puerto Rican people because Puerto Rico is considered foreign in terms of the tax reform. So this will add a 20% excise tax to anything produced in Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico produces 30% of the medicines used in the United States. This will be a gigantic blow to the economy there. And as everybody knows, Puerto Rico is doing really bad right now. They don't have enough money to fix the infrastructure. But my concern is, let's not destroy the economy, and let's treat Puerto Rico like what it is. It needs to be considered domestic. No extra taxes, nothing to destroy the economy there.
Okay, thank you. So on our list of non-negotiables with the Republicans before December 22nd is a massive disaster relief package that treats Puerto Rico the same way we're going to be treating Houston and Florida, and no different. Okay? They get the same amount of help. They are Americans, and they deserve our help. And let's be honest, if we don't give them that help, they're moving to the mainland. They're already moving, and I've already met with people who are moving to Massachusetts. We have the 5th largest Puerto Rican population in the 50 states already. So if they don't think that they can give their kids a good education, if they don't think they can give their kids the health care they need, if they don't think that there's a future down there, as these communities continue to, stay in condition without electricity, then we should expect them to just move to the mainland, which they don't want to do. Any more, I'm sure, than my grandparents didn't want to come here from Ireland. They just weren't doing so great in Ireland. That's why people move from the country of origin, right? They come to America not because they wanted to, because they just weren't doing so great back in that country of origin, and that's kind of where we are with Puerto Rico, and they are Americans, and they will be entitled to all of the full benefits. So we're making that a condition, and one of the things that I'm also very interested in is giving full debt forgiveness to the Puerto Rican government and the people down there, just to make sure that they get kind of the ability to get back up on their feet. And I'll just add one final thing. As we're giving them money, we can't allow kind of these companies that are coming from Montana or God knows where to come in to rebuild the infrastructure in those countries, inside of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, I will add as well. If we're going to rebuild the grid down there, let's rebuild it as a renewable electricity model for the whole country. Because the one thing we all know right here in Lowell tonight is there'll be an ad-on saying, come to Florida, come to a sunny place. Well, it's 365 days a year warm and sunny in Puerto Rico. So, and in Mexico, it's now 2 to 3 cents a kilowatt hour for solar. So let's make their system resilient for the next 200 years and allow them to use God's source of energy, which will protect them against these kind of shutdowns in the future. So thank you so much. Yes, over here, sir.
Yes, I am Michael Bleiweiss from Methuen, and I actually just sent a letter on net neutrality to the Lawrence Eagle Tribune last night.
Thank you.
And my big worry about it is actually that the ISPs could suppress political speech that opposes their interests more than, suppressing entrepreneurs. But my real issue today is the We the People amendment. We know that a certain political party exists to serve the interests of billionaire donors and multinational corporations. And the reason they have so much power is because for the past 130 years, the Supreme Court has been giving more and more power to corporations and money and giving them constitutional rights as if they were people. So the We the People amendment is calling to amend the Constitution to declare that corporations are not people and money is not equivalent to speech.
All right, and I am with you, sir. I am with you. I do not believe that corporations are people. I know Mitt Romney does, but I do not, okay? And so I agree with you 100%.
Have you signed on to HJ Res 48?
Whose bill is that?
You would ask me that.
Because you're a smart guy.
I know.
And I know you know the answer.
I also suffer from severe name aphasia.
Uh-huh.
But it's been sitting in
Okay, I'm pretty sure, I'm going to take a look at it. I do support the concept that you were talking about, and I also agree with you on ISP, right. And ISP means Internet Service Provider, which is kind of a fancy word for Amazon, Verizon, and AT&T. Okay, so that's what ISP is, and what are they going to do in order to, if there are things that they don't like about the speech that is happening, if net neutrality is taken away in terms of curtailing it. So I thank you, sir. Yes, over here.
Hi, my name is Manaz Mer. I live in Andover. I wanted to thank you as well. I'm proud to live in Massachusetts and have you and Senator Warren as our senators, and I thank you for all you did. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned because to be able to pass the bills that we all believe in, we need more votes. in Congress. And I feel that Democrats hold their members at a higher standard than the Republicans do. And that's noble, but as we lose more people, I'm afraid that we allow the Republicans to just rob the country, whether with the tax bills or net neutrality and everything else. I wonder what is it that we can do to, not just for Massachusetts, but for the rest of the country to be able to get more Democrats so we can have the votes to be able to pass this.
No, that's a good question. So you put your finger on it. There are 100 senators. We have 48, the Democrats. The Republicans have 52. So Elizabeth Warren and I, our job is to represent you every day on the floor of the United States Senate. And we do that, and we try to cajole, to persuade, other, senators who are Republicans to vote with us. However, on this tax bill, we have 48. All we need is 3 to get to 51. 3 out of 52 people to say, this is just totally wrong. Heading towards Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, that's just totally wrong. Please give us a no vote. Huh? And so far, we can't get 3 of them. It's unbelievable, but we can't. So they are going to try to do this, but I will tell you what, you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. There's going to be a political whirlwind this next November. This is only polling out at like 28% favorable, this tax plan. Yeah, they think that because people are, are old or something, that they're stupid. Well, they're not. You know what I mean? They have already figured this out. They've already figured out that there's a magic solution to the problem that is to come over here to Medicare and Social Security. So they're going to pay a huge political price. We will get more seats. I think we'll get a lot more seats next November. The price is, though, this is the price. It's too high of a price. In other words, we should be able to get 3 people to say no to this atrocity, to this absolute disgrace of a bill, to maybe the worst single bill ever considered on a substantive issue on the floor of the House, with unemployment at near record lows, with the stock market at a record high. How can you possibly justify tax breaks additionally for the wealthiest and for the biggest corporations? With no correlation between those tax cuts and any guaranteed economic growth. We're already at 3.7%. So you can see that the benefits are going to be marginal, but the harm is going to be massive ultimately. Yes, come back over here.
Good evening, Senator. My name is Arafat. I'm from Billerica, Massachusetts.
You're from where?
Billerica, Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for all the efforts that you've been putting in. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm here to talk about a very less known issue, but I stand here on behalf of thousands of legal immigrants, highly skilled legal immigrants from the state of Massachusetts, as well as about 1.5 million legal immigrants, highly skilled immigrants across the nation.
Where are you from?
I'm from India.
India, good.
Yeah, we are all stuck in a severe backlog, a green card backlog, which has made it very difficult to get a permanent residentship over here. And we've got our jobs over here, we work, pay our taxes, do our investment, everything like every other common person over here, but it has been very difficult to pursue our entrepreneurial dream, and a lot of our dependents as well, who are, some of them being citizens of this great nation. So a couple of bills have been introduced in the House as well as in the Senate. The one in the House, it has about 300 plus co-sponsors, and also in the Senate, S281. I stand before you seeking your support for this bill so that all the high-skilled immigrants get a fair chance to contribute to the community.
Thank you. What is your degree in, sir?
So I have a master's in computer science from both Harvard as well as from Northeastern University.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's thank you, sir, so much. So we talk about, building a wall on the Mexican border, and we know that that will not be effective. But there's another set of immigrants that come to America each year, which is about 1 million legal immigrants. Legal. And Massachusetts, for the last 30 years, has been number 6 on the list of all of the states for those 1 million people. So we're only the 15th largest in population, but in Mumbai, or in Hong Kong, or in Costa Rica, or Haiti, no matter where you are, people who can come here legally are like saying, I think I want to go to Massachusetts. That's a place where I might be able to use my education. So President Trump, about 3 months ago, held a big press conference with a couple of senators announcing that he wants to cut the number of legal immigrants from 1 million to 500,000. So let's just talk about what the business plan is for Massachusetts. Here's our business plan. It's a very simple business plan. Number 1, we want to draw the smartest people from across America and from across the world to go to school in Massachusetts universities. That's step number 1 in our business plan. Step number 2, we want them to stay here and not leave, and give them access to the capital that they need in order to start up their own little small company or to attract them into the already existing companies. Number 3, we want to give them the best educated workforce in the United States and the best trained workforce in the United States. So at the 4th, 8th, and 10th grades in Massachusetts, we are number 1 in math, verbal, and science. 4th, 8th, and 10th grades, math, verbal, and science, Massachusetts versus the other 49 states. In fact, if we were a separate country, we'd be behind Singapore, Finland, and a couple of other countries if we were a separate 6.7 million person country, right? That's our business plan. And the 4th step is the welcome mat to highly trained, skilled immigrants who will come here and innovate. About 30% of all of our new companies get started by immigrants. So we want them here. So what is the president doing? Well, he wants to cut education, wants to tax graduate students, wants to reduce the number of immigrants who are educated and trained coming into the country, wants to make it, in other words, very difficult for Massachusetts to continue its business plan that has 3.7% unemployment. Right? So that's all under assault. So I agree with you, sir, wherever you are, and you have gone. We have to, in the context of a comprehensive immigration bill, which at some point, hopefully the president will come to the table, we can have a deal that deals with all of these issues. It's a crazy situation where the Democrats are going to have to use a big part of their political capital in the next 2 weeks up to December 22nd to protect the dreamers who are either in the U.S. Army, our universities, or in corporations across America right now and working. Okay? So we have to spend our capital to protect them, which if they ever were all sent back would probably add a half a point to our unemployment rate in the United States. It would be absolutely absurd. We'd lose all these young, talented people. So thank you for raising the issue. You're right on the money, and we have to find a way of resolving it. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Markey. My first point is that it's my understanding that the Trump administration does take the opioid epidemic very seriously. This past summer, he said that the opioid epidemic was a national public health emergency, and as such, that expands legal authorities for the federal government to marshal resources to state and local partners. And I don't say that as partisan. Now, my second point.
But again, no money. He hasn't put up any new money. So he says you can reorganize the already existing money, but no new money. And when only 20% get the coverage they need, it's going to take a lot more money. Our public health people here in Massachusetts say it's $45 billion more. And I've introduced a bill to that effect, $45 billion. But so far, he hasn't put up an additional nickel.
Well, with all due respect, I believe that it's a pretty bipartisan issue. I know Susan Collins takes this very seriously, and it will probably be included in a spending bill. In fact, Elizabeth Warren was the only senator just a few months ago not to vote for opioid funding. Now, my second point is that since the 2016 election, you've concentrated on the Russia interference or influence in the 2016 election. And we all know that Special Counsel Mueller has his own independent probe and that's very important. I think it's equally important that our nation's premier law enforcement body and top national security agency, the FBI, be fully staffed. And so I was shocked and confused when I saw that you were one of 4 senators who voted against Christopher Wray's nomination to lead the FBI, and I'm just interested as to what you were thinking when you cast that vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yeah, so I would say you are right that Susan Collins and others make it bipartisan. That is the opioid issue. But we're 1 year in and we still don't have an additional nickel. Okay, and we're going to use our capital in the budget negotiations. We had to get that money. But it should be bipartisan, but it's going to be the Democratic party that has to do that, unfortunately. And Elizabeth Warren supports 100% full funding for opioid treatment. I just want to make sure that that's the case. And with regard to the FBI nominee, I was not happy with his answers in terms of surveillance issues and the compromise of the privacy of all Americans without court-obtained warrants. So I was not happy with that. I wanted a full-throated guarantee, and he did not give that full answer. And to my way of thinking, I think it's only going to become more and more of a problem in our country. And I just want to make sure that the civil liberties of every person are in fact protected. So I actually raised the issue just so we're debating that going forward. Because increasingly what happens with at the federal level, especially in the Trump era, is they just want to be able to go in and grab the information but not have gone to a court in order to obtain the warrant that they had an ability to do so. So you're raising good questions, and I thank you for being here, sir. Thank you. Over here, yes.
Thank you, Senator. Bob Willard from Andover. I want to call your attention to one...
But I will also say this, sir, and I thank you for being here, because it just occurred to me. Yeah, I don't like the way the president is attacking the FBI. And I agree with you, okay? The president right now is engaging in demagoguery in attacking the FBI, attacking their... I had a substantive disagreement on a policy issue, but now on an ongoing basis, it looks like the president is engaging in a campaign to undermine the confidence which the American people should have in the Robert Mueller investigation. And I don't think what the president is doing is right. So I would agree that that is something that we have to protect against. So I thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm still Bob Willard. I'm still from Andover. We all know that the Russians messed with our election in 2016. We all know they'll be back in 2018 and 2020. And I want to call your attention, sir, to one of the ways that the Russians can attack our elections, namely by hacking our voting machines. You've probably all seen reports in the press about what I call retail hacking, where one person hacks into one voting machine and changes the results or makes the machine play Yankee Doodle Dandy or something. But that's really not, frankly, very dangerous because that only affects one precinct. The more dangerous form of voting hacking is wholesale hacking, where malicious software gets downloaded from the vendor into a mass set of voting machines. That's very dangerous. That can change our elections, sadly. And I want to note that the machines that are by and large used for voting machines in Massachusetts are not made in the United States. The software has never been examined independently. The download procedures have never been examined independently. And that's because the vendors have claims of proprietary designs. So, Senator, I urge you to contact the Federal Elections Commission and demand that they at least demand open source software for all voting machines in the future. Thank you.
All right, and I can give you an answer on that. I agree with you 100%. There's a kind of there's a Dickensian quality to these new information technologies. They are the best of technologies and the worst of technologies simultaneously. They are technologies that can enable and ennoble, or they can degrade and debase. And what we're finding is that people who are willful can find the apertures through which they can come in and compromise the American people. And at the top of the list are our elections. we started the American Revolution here because we were not happy with King George. We were not happy with this guy. So we said, we're going to have our own elections, our own president, our own Senate, our own House of Representatives, because we're tired of you, King George, a foreign potentate interfering with our elected officials here. And now we have a foreign potentate in Russia who clearly orchestrated some attempt to infiltrate and compromise our elections. And so we have to be very, very conscious of the fact that this attempt did occur. We have to put the protections in place, but the American people also have a right to know whether it's Manafort, whether it's Stone, whether it's Jared, no matter who it is, that all of the information must be out so the American people can understand what happened to our presidential election last year. The American people have a right to understand that, and they have a right to ensure that Robert Mueller's investigation continues unfettered. So thank you, sir. Over here? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Dee Halzak from Lowell. Thank you for all that you do, especially for the environment and nuclear safety and net neutrality. My concern is the military budget. We recently saw an $800 billion increase in the budget, and I believe you voted for that. And I would like you to explain that, because if we would hold the Defense Department to deal with the waste instead of constantly increasing the budget, we'd have more money for education and healthcare and infrastructure. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's what we're about to do in the next 2 weeks. You don't get one more penny for defense unless we get the same penny for healthcare, education, science, for Puerto Rico, for you name it, all the way down the line. It's going to have to be penny for penny, dollar for dollar. We're not giving, and we will not allow any imposition of a dramatic increase in defense spending to occur if it is not accompanied by a concomitant amount of money for the domestic programs in our country. Over the Boston Public Library is the inscription, the best defense of a people is, the best defense of a nation is the education of its people. Okay? So you need defense spending, but you need equal investment in the people in the country, because that is what ultimately makes us strong. That is what makes us the most powerful country in the world. So I thank you so much for being here. Yes, over here.
Good evening, Senator Markey. My name is Nicholas Suarez. I'm from the Boston area, and I'm a freshman at Boston University. I'm actually originally from Florida.
Beautiful.
So I'm here today, Senator Markey, to say I want to personally say thank you. Thank you for everything you have done to protect kids from tobacco and tobacco industries.
Thank you.
In today's society, with so much going on, it's nice to know we have officials like you fighting the good fight.
Thank you.
As you know, more and more people are using e-cigs and cigars that come in flavors like gummy bears, cotton candy, wild berry, and watermelon. My mother used to be one of those people. Before I came to Boston, I lived in Florida with my family. And for so many years, my mother was a smoker. She came from Cartagena, Colombia. And that's sort of the culture growing up, at least back then. She picked it up from a young age, and she smoked for her entire life until I got involved with anti-tobacco advocacy. And even then, she turned to e-cigs, which she thought would be a better alternative. And that's not the reality. The reality is that these products still contain nicotine and harmful health risks. Luckily, with my increased involvement with advocacy, I finally got my mom to quit, and she's been smoke-free for almost 7 years now. However, the same can't be said for a large portion of the youth of Massachusetts. Senator Markey, in Massachusetts alone, 23% of high school students use e-cigs compared to the 7.7% that use traditional cigarettes. And 15.4% of high school boys in Massachusetts smoke cigars. Last year, the FDA implemented new rules for e-cigs and cigars. Unfortunately, some in Congress want to weaken FDA's authority over these products. Senator Markey, I want to thank you for your support of oversight of all these products and ask that you do all you can to oppose efforts to weaken FDA's authority over e-cigs and cigars, including keeping them out of the spending bills within Congress, which will be finalized in the coming weeks. FDA oversight is needed to protect Massachusetts kids and reduce tobacco-related disease. It is people like you, Senator, people that can make a change and want to make a change, that encouraged me to delve into advocacy and policy change. And I thank you for that, and I want you to keep up the hard work.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So I am, I'm just like you, actually. I'm just like you. As I said, my father graduated from the vocational program at Lawrence High School. And when I was 12, my father said to me, Eddie, and my father smoked 2 packs of Camels a day, drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company. His son is a United States Senator. It's a good country, huh? You can just do it just like that from a triple-decker in Lawrence to United States Senate. But when I was 12, he said, Eddie, I started smoking at 12. He said, and I know you probably will too, down the park. So just don't take the money out of my pockets. Okay? You're going to have to earn it. Well, my mother, I think now I realized that they were working a play on me. And so my mother, on the same day, said, you know what I'm going to do tonight? And they're going to let our bedroom door open so you can hear your father sleeping at night. So you heard these incredible breaths that were going up and down. My father was 6'1", 265, just a big truck driver, my father, you know. So that was, so she tried to convince me not to smoke, and I've never had a cigarette. So they did it, but my father gave me permission. You know, if you want to be like me, you can, but my mother worked a public health reverse takedown on my brain. And my father died of lung cancer. You know? He died from smoking those Camels, okay? Killed him. And so I don't feel more strongly about any issue than that, because it is the single greatest cause of disease in the country, still, smoking. And to create a new pathway, these electronic cigarettes, you know, the flavored, it's just creating a pathway for kids. So under no circumstances, if I'm the last guy standing, they are not taking authority away from the Food and Drug Administration to regulate those cigarettes so that young people don't get put on a pathway that winds up with them suffering the same fate that has occurred with generation after generation of those who were sold a bill of goods in terms of the safety of cigarettes. And by the way, you know who the fossil fuel industry has hired? The same PR firms that they had hired on tobacco. The same lousy, crummy, compromised science, okay? So I thank you for standing up, and thank you for being part of the new generation. You know, I don't know if you know this, but my wife was Assistant Surgeon General of the United States. My wife retired as a 2-star admiral in the Public Health Service. So, so she began in the 90s to kind of create a whole way of thinking when she was named the head of all women's health for the country about a lot of these issues. And you know, you remember Virginia Slim, she'd come a long way, baby? So what they did was they hired the father of modern public relations to construct that campaign. In the 1930s, no women died of lung cancer in the United States because they didn't smoke. Women didn't smoke. But they wanted to make it an equal opportunity disease. So they would be equal with men. And about 10 years ago, lung cancer deaths in women surpassed breast cancer deaths in America. So a big success for the tobacco industry, and the public relations industry. And we got to make sure we don't see a repetition of that. They need to be regulated. And I thank you for standing up and being the next generation to fight that public health battle. Thank you, sir. Yes, come on over here.
Thank you, Senator. I am representing, I guess, CCL, Citizens Climate Lobby.
Great.
And I have a question from one of the people that are at CCL. Also, James Hansen, NASA scientist, he really got me into CCL, looking at them, and CCL is for a carbon tax. How much do you think fossil fuel prices would need to rise to spark a clean energy revolution in the American economy? And are there any policy options that would produce such a price rise in an equitable way?
Okay, great. Thank you for that question. And by the way, I want to keep this on schedule. So I'm going to answer the questions of everyone who's at the microphones right now, but no more than that, just so we can meet the deadline here. But, and again, we thank everyone for being here. including, I see back here, Laurie Trahan, who is back here, who used to be Marty Meehan's chief of staff. Thank you for coming tonight, Laurie. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, great question. So this is going to be a dilemma going forward. I am the author of the Appliance Efficiency Act, which requires air conditioners, refrigerators, you name it. Just think of the air conditioning in this room, if it was like half as efficient as it is right now in terms of the electricity bill for UMass. So my law has required there to be an improvement in air conditioning every single time there's a rulemaking. So we now, because of my law, have about 100 fewer coal-burning plants in America, because we're just, as my mother used to say, my mother, again, didn't get to go to college, but she would always say, Eddie, you have to learn how to work smarter, not harder. And she would always say that immediately after saying that she was going to donate my brain to Harvard Medical School as a completely unused human organ, okay? So that's what energy efficiency is. It's just working smarter, not harder. So that law stays on the books, and it keeps making toasters and refrigerators and air conditioning more and more efficient, reducing the need for more electricity. In 2007, I was able to pass a law to increase the fuel economy standards of all the vehicles which we drive in America. And I'm very proud of that law. That's the law which President Obama used to raise the goal to 54.5 miles per gallon by the year 2025. 54.5. Huh? That's where Tesla has come from. That's where all this comes from. The goal is very high. That reduces greenhouse gases. So here's what gets complicated. A lot of the Republicans who, the economists, we'll say, the economists who want a price on carbon say that the price you're going to have to pay is doing away with the fuel economy standards and doing away with the appliance efficiency standards and the tax subsidies we give to wind and solar to help them make up for 100 years of tax breaks for oil and gas and coal, right? You have to give them back. So then you have to weigh it to see how high will the tax be. Because I personally don't think that there are a lot of Republican congressmen who are going to vote for a 50 cent or $1 a gallon increase in the taxes. Now, if that comes to pass, they're going to say, we'll do it, but now you have to take away these other protections, the fuel economy standards, the appliance efficiency standards, all the way down the line. So it will have to be a big negotiation, but we've dramatically already seen an increase in fuel economy standards, these cooler cars, which everyone is driving, and it's just going to continue and continue. Volvo's already saying they're never going to make another, a car with an internal combustion engine. So the revolution is moving towards the goal where we can reduce greenhouse gases dramatically, but that's going to be a very complex kind of three-dimensional negotiation to make sure that it nets out as a big gain at the end of the day. And so that will be less science and more political science in order to get it correctly. But I've been doing this for my entire career, focusing upon this issue. And by the way, we now have 100,000 clean energy jobs here in Massachusetts. It's now one of our top 10 employers. And along with net neutrality, along with the NIH budget, it's what draws all these young people to our state. So we just got to make sure that we protect that growth. Yes, over here, sir.
Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Hugh Tones. I'm from Pepperell, Mass. I'm also a veteran. I'm a senile citizen. And I must say...
Hardly. Yeah, go ahead.
I bet you I am older than you.
Go ahead.
Listening to you this afternoon has gained a great deal of respect for you. There are many issues that obviously are pretty complicated. And I was originally going to jump your bones, and I'm still going to do it, about asking you the fact that I had sent a letter to your office requesting a reply relevant to the fact that we have Medicare, which, yes, thank you, please keep it going. How first also can we get the American citizenship and citizenry, I should say, to become more active and smarten up and nail some of these Republicans with the issues that are important to our life, to our society. What I had written to you about was to ask you why, if Medicare covers 80% of my bills for approximately $110, why do I have to pay another $183 a month to Blue Cross Blue Shield, where 20% of $110 is roughly $27? I'd be happy to pay the $27 to the government, and where does the rest of the money go? And I didn't get any response back.
Okay.
You know, it's...
Well, as you leave tonight, you're just going to talk to Kate Mache over here, so you'll get the comprehensive answer. But the brief form of it would be that ultimately, on this, Bernie is correct, and we have to move to a single-payer system, okay? So, so we just have to keep moving, but at the same time, you know, we have to deal with the kind of the restrictions, okay? That in terms of political reality, how far can we go in terms of getting the funding which we need, given the fact that the eternal enmity, again, they harbor an ancient animosity towards all of these programs. So we've done the best that we can, and we have a platform that already exists, and we're going to try to fend off for the next 1 year their attempts to destroy it, and then to return to the discussion as to how we can make it better. So I thank you for, by the way, I thank you for your service as well, sir, to our country, and I thank you for being here, and I thank you for your nice words as well. Thank you, sir. I'm saying we're moving, we have to have this debate. We need to have this debate in our country. And again, my wife is a physician. She did her training at the VA, you know, and she stayed in, you know, for decades in the public health service. And so I'm wholeheartedly in concurrence with you as the ultimate, as the... All right, so the citizenry, here's the thing. Donald Trump is a uniter and not a divider. Donald Trump is uniting the American people, saying we got to stop this craziness with regard to the destruction of the healthcare system in our country. And that is what is going to ultimately bring people out. People vote on their self-interest, okay? And at the top of the list, as Ralph Waldo Emerson said here in Concord, health is the first wealth. And they have been all out attacking it for the whole first year of his administration. You know, when my father was born in Lawrence, his life expectancy was 48 years of age. And what happened? We then added in vaccinations, Medicare, Medicaid, public health interventions, clean air, clean water, safe meats, safe products all the way up and down the line. A child born today in the United States of America, their life expectancy is now bordering on 90. So we've added, up till now, it's up to 80. So we've added, what would that be, 32 bonus years of life. So we went from the Garden of Eden to 1911, and it was 48. And from 1911 to today, it's 80. And a kid born today is heading toward 90, okay? So that's just progressive policies on a bipartisan basis, you know, that said we're going to try to work in order to protect the lives of ordinary families against these kinds of terrible things that can affect their health. And we haven't finished our course yet, sir, but we're going to continue. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Don Oldrin. I'm on Middle Street here in Lowell.
And you're what?
Middle Street in
Lowell. Great. Thank you, sir.
And I've been voting Democrat since Johnson, 71.
Excellent.
Okay, but I know about Social Security was started by Franklin Delano Roosevelt as a lockbox, and it has not been. The George Bush's wars that were funded by our Social Security. It wasn't a bill passed in Congress. How can they keep on doing this? And they've been doing it forever.
Again, what their goal is, it's a very simple plan. I give them credit. Okay? They're committed. They never go away. They keep coming back to these same three programs especially that really ticks them off. And their goal is to run up a debt that's so big, and that's a big part of this tax plan, the deficit's just going to explode. The modest estimates are $1 trillion additional dollars to the deficit. Then they're going to be able to shed their crocodile tears. Oh my goodness, can you believe how big the deficit is? And then they're going to say, how can we turn Social Security into a debt-soaked relic of what it is today? So,
funded by the individual and his employer.
I am agreeing with you, but ultimately, that's their plan. And that's why we have to be on high alert for the next year, because that's the next agenda that they are going to turn to once this tax break takes place. The good news is he's only at 28% favorability on this plan nationwide right now. And they have the votes to do it, by the way. They have the votes to execute a plan that only has 28% favorability. Now that includes Mississippi, Alabama, Texas. You can imagine what the number is in Massachusetts, you know? This thing is probably like 16% favorability in Massachusetts in order to average out nationally at 28, huh? So we're the most educated state for a good reason, and politically, it's like transparent what the agenda is, and it's gonna come back to haunt them. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Senator Markey. My name is John Espinosa, and I'm from Lowell. First, I want to thank you for serving all of us so well. My question is about health care. This is a very important issue for me because I am losing my health care coverage at the end of next month. I have been teaching at UMass Lowell as a part-time adjunct faculty member for 5 years. And despite the fact that I teach part-time, UML does not provide health insurance or retirement, nor does it pay into Social Security. My union, the Union of Adjunct Faculty of the UAW, has been in contract negotiations for over 2.5 years, specifically because of this issue. Can you elaborate on your position on health insurance for all when employers like UML refuse to cover its employees like me?
I said okay, thank you. Well, I'd like to learn more of the details. We had a conversation beforehand with you and others who are similarly situated up here. And as I committed to you, I'm going to sit down and try to understand why there is this disparity which exists and try to find a way of reconciling those differences. So I promise you that I will absolutely do that and do my best to try to help you as we go forward. So thank you for coming tonight, and I will do that. Yes, sir. Final question.
Hello, Senator. My name is Matthew Fontana. I believe you know my uncle, Dennis Newman. He worked on your campaign.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You should give him a call sometime.
Yeah, you know what? You're smart if you're related to Dennis.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dennis was valedictorian at Malden Catholic High School. Okay, so smart. Went to Harvard. Yeah, so you've got to be a smart guy.
Well, anyways, my concern is within the Democratic Party itself, a particular problem regarding consultants that, well, let's face it, siphon money from the party to like pay themselves. And well, that left us open to attack, and well, we all know what happened in 2016. So my question is, are you taking any steps to address this and maybe remove some of those consultants?
I don't know specifically what you're talking about, but I'd be glad to learn in more detail what exactly, in your opinion, needs to be remedied. But I will say this as well, okay, about the Democratic Party in Massachusetts. We have 2 Democratic senators, 9 Democratic congressmen, and so we are not perfect, okay? That is a very elusive human quality, okay? But we do better than the rest of the country, even as we admit our imperfections. And so I'd be more than willing to sit down with you, and we have staff here who I think would love to hear your suggestions for the party going forward. And thank you, Mr. Fontana, for being here. Very much appreciated. And I appreciate your all being here tonight. I scheduled it knowing that there would be no Patriots game, thinking that would enhance the turnout, and it has. And I thank you for being here. My father is from Merrimack Valley. It's near and dear to me. I'm kind of hardwired to, think that it's my responsibility to kind of reflect these values. And I thought I'd just end on one final issue, and that is on all of these mass killings that are going on across the country. I went to a wake for a family that lost a mother. She was in Las Vegas. She was shot at the very beginning of the whole episode with this terrible weapon that the guy set up with the bump stock. And the husband was devastated, the daughter was devastated. This was not a couple that was very old. And they were from here. They're from one of your neighboring communities. So I'm not going to mention them specifically, but I went to that wake about 6 weeks ago. And it was very difficult to explain how these bump stocks that turn a weapon into a machine gun are legal in our country. It's hard to explain to the family that while 94% of all Americans want to have full registration of every person, and you have to go through a background check in order to get a gun, and that should just be the law, that you shouldn't be able to buy a gun any more easily than you can buy a car. You need a registration, get health insurance all the way down the line. That why should you be able to buy a gun in 94% of all Americans? How can you go on Instagram and get an Insta-gun, you know, without going through a background check? It's just wrong. Same thing is true with bump stocks. So from my perspective, our job has to be to make sure that we turn NRA into not relevant anymore in American politics. We have to say to people, we're not trying to confiscate your guns. We're not trying to take away the gun of a hunter or someone that really needs it. But you can't say that a bump stock has any legitimate role to play in our society. You can't say that someone should be able to buy a gun without a background check. That's just common sense public health protection, for everyone else in the society. So I just thought I'd throw in that issue at the end as well, because that is something that's coming together on a bipartisan basis, a little bit, at least in the Senate. And it's my hope that we can make some progress on that. And that'll be, that would be a great day if we could do that, although there are going to be adamant, obstinate, obdurate opponents in the House of Representatives who don't want any regulation at any time. But I just think the time has come. How many more of these incredible, horrific events do we all have to live through before we put common sense gun laws on the books without banning these weapons? So I thank you all so much for being here. I love being up here in Lowell. This turnout on a chilly Sunday night in Lowell is absolutely heartening to me. I get the energy from you, and I'm going to try to reflect it in what you hear down in Washington. And all I can say to you is, whether it be the climate or opioids or infrastructure jobs, or you name it, all the way down the line, I'm going to try to reflect you. And for you and all of your families, have happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. However you celebrate. Happy Kwanzaa. You know, have a happy holiday season. Thank you all so much for being here.